All right, tonight I wanted to go over some interesting data and some hopefully be able to teach you all some stuff. Um, we're going to be looking at some data for my own car. And I recently swapped the car over to Twins, and we went out testing Darlington in back in December 21st, I think it was, and we could not get the car to move off the starting line. So here's a log from this. It was very low in power. We could not get the car to move. I shouldn't say off the starting line. Couldn't get the car to move more than about zero point 0.4 into the run. So what happened was we only gained about 0.8% nose weight, but we moved the weight farther forward and lower, a lot lower. And in turn, it made the chassis not really want to react and move the way it always moved prior. So this is a log from when we went out testing Darlington 12 21 23. Got a handful of logs and they all look the same. But as you can tell, it's really low on power. You know, we're 0.35 into the run, 0.37 into the run. I mean, we're out of the throttle a little bit. I've got timing retards in this thing. The boost is only at 10 pounds. I mean, it's an unbelievably slow curve. It's just not fast. Okay, so look at the G meter only goes to 1.7 G. It's just not a fast tune-up. The track was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was cold. It was pretty good. It should have taken this. So came home, regrouped, and just started looking over the car, looking at bar angles and whatnot on the car. And I can show you a little snippet of that too. Let's see here. If this is a stock suspension Mustang, um, stockish suspension. So here you go. So this is the bar angles that we had in the car, and this is what was in the car forever. Um, don't take these numbers and shove them in your car. It's not going to work. Anyway, so that's what we had in the car forever. We raced it all last year like that, and the end result was the car separated in the rear like it always did, but it wouldn't move the front end at all. So the premise of this video is really to explain how wheelie control works, show you in real time how it worked, and how well it worked, and then also how to set it up in Holly. But I figured I'd give you a little bit of a prelude to what this video is really about. So anyway, go to Darlington. We don't make it more than zero point 0.4. I mean, literally, we're spinning the tires by 0.3, zero point 0.4 into the run. Like there. Yeah, oh, here you go. There we go. We lost a tire at 0.33. So, and the G meter was only at, look at it, was on the downhill already, 1.68. So, this was obviously just was not going to work, right? So could we have neutered it more? Sure, but that doesn't teach us anything. This car usually goes, 2.2 G to, if you're on a mediocre track, it'll normally sometimes it'll go 2.4, 2.5 on a gray track or whatever. So either way, it's way down, right? So we're getting this G data from the Davis Technologies VPS. We're getting the G data and we're getting the VPS pitch data from the Davis Technologies VPS. So let's just look just at that. So there's our drive shaft speed, and then there's this is pitch. Okay, so this blue line is pitch. So if you notice, pitch starts off 0.3 degrees downhill. It gets a quick initial snap right there where it goes a little bit positive, but we're only talking about 0.19, right? And then it kind of seesaws, and then it settles back down to over here, where this is the attitude of the car. We're back to kind of the way it looks like at ride height. Now the rear suspension's already moved, right? So there it is. Rear suspension's already started to move. We started off at 1.8 inches, and there by 0.3-ish, we're at 2.4. So the rear suspension's moved 0.6 of an inch. The front's moved, but very little, right? We started at 3.3 and it moves to 3.6. So it's really only moved 0.3 inches. I can tell you that the front shocks were full loose, which is something that we would have never done with the old setup, right? Because it would have just climbed the ring gear and wheelied to the 330, right? So this was Darlington. This was our attempt at the first attempt with the new combo and whatnot. So a little backstory: we switched the car over to Twins. We also put a different converter in it, and the new converter is a lockup. We moved weight around a little bit, but either way, This was our first attempt. Well, technically our second attempt, right? But whatever. I've got 5 or 6 logs that all look the exact same. So the car wasn't on a dyno between the single and the twins. I just built a new fuel table for it. Nailed that, right? So we didn't have any, there was no oddball anomalies here. This is a pretty back to back. Even though we went from single to twins and from a non-lockup to a lockup, this thing should have went down, and it was because we moved weight, right? So I get back home. Here we go. This is the tune-up 4 when we're going to go out and test on 1.4.24, right? So we went to Orangeburg and we tested on 1.4.24. All right, so let's look at this. Now, this is the first attempt at Orangeburg, right? So what we did is we moved some bars around. And again, this is not going to tell you where to put your bars at, but let's see right there. That's what we moved it to. So we moved the instant center up, we moved the instant center out further. But it's still, it was a reasonably it was a reasonably small move on the bar. But look at what it did now for the way that our pitch is looking, right? So if we look at pitch before we were downhill 0.33, negative 0.33, whatever, we're close enough, right? It's pretty damn close, right? 0.30. They're talking about 0.03 degrees. It's nothing. Now notice what pitch does, and if you can't see, we can do this. We can go style, pitch, line type, make it a little fatter. There we go. So look at what pitch does. Pitch immediately starts to go up, right? So what are we doing? We're moving weight to the back tire. We're picking weight off of the front tire and we're moving it to the back tire, okay? Now, pitch is cool because pitch is showing you the attitude of the car, if you will. So if you look, the right rear shock, this is a different reason why this data looks a little jagged. So kind of disregard the jaggedness of this data. We found a little bit of an issue, but the rear shock's moving, right? So the rear shock's moving abruptly, right? So it's a lot looser. 1.8, we're here by 0.3 where we were looking at in the run before, right there, 0.30. We're already moved an inch, right? And then let's look at the right front. The right front is moving a little bit faster, right? Not a ton faster, but still a little bit faster, right? So by that same point, we're at 0.5 inches. So we moved a half an inch. So now the attitude of the car has changed completely. When you let go of the button, it wants to move weight to the back of the car, okay? So it wants to, the front end wants to grow, okay? So what does that equate to? Well, the first thing you're probably asking yourself is, why does this RPM trace look like crap? Because it looks like crap, right? Well, let's look. This is our wheelie control table. Well, look at what wheelie control is doing. All right. So this green line is our wheelie control. If you look, it's pulling out 2.4 degrees. It also rode the dots a little bit. Oh, let me try to find it. There we go. It also rode the dots a little bit on the profiler, which was unplanned, but it is what it is. So let's see. Let's get rid of these slip calculators. We'll go to pitch. There it is. And then let's go to, we had a timing retard in there, and we also had a profiler actions, right? So the profiler traction control grabbed it a little bit. I was very just afraid of spinning because I was so fed up with the last outing that we had. I just didn't want this damn thing to spin. I was like, it better go down. So I had the profiler EFI module from Davis turned on, and it was doing a little bit of timing retard here. If you look at ignition timing, I mean, it's in the dumpster here, the whole run, right? But this is really, once the profiler retard turns off, which is right here, I only had it on for 0.8 or so. It starts to go to total crap, right? And if we look, this is where our pitch really starts to come back. So this timing coming out from the profiler kept our pitch calmed down a little bit, and then once the timing goes back in it, look at what happens, right? The timing starts to go back in it, and now the pitch is climbing. So now we're into wheelie control. So if we look at wheelie control, right there, look at that, wheelie control, the blue line. So let's get rid of the base ignition timing, let's get rid of the profiler retard. And this is my wheelie control table, right? So wheelie control was doing nothing while the profiler was doing an 8-degree retard, right? whatever it was, whatever it turned out to be, 8.5 to 8 3/4 degree. It was doing nothing there. Wheelie control didn't do anything through here. But then once the profiler retard turned off, the wheelie control had to come back in and save its ass because the car was transferring weight a lot more abruptly than it did before. Now, did I screw up for this run? Sure did, right? And that's okay though, because I didn't know what this car was going to do. I didn't know how it was going to act when you let go to transfer. I didn't know what it was going to do. We moved bars and we had no idea. And this is a pretty, if you can't relate to this, I don't know what to tell you, because if you guys move stuff around in the car, you just, the first time you take the car out, you don't know what it's going to do, right? So there's some, so I'm going to show you how to set up wheelie control. I've made another video on this, but we're still going to show you how I went through this from run by run. So if we go to advanced tables, right? Actually, the first thing you need to do, if you have a VPS and you haven't set it up, watch my other videos on it. But you need to set up the inputs for it, right? So if we look for VPS pitch right here, I built the input, and it's plus or minus 12 degrees, okay, of pitch. So we look at our advanced table. It's a 2D table right here. It's wheelie control, okay? So its name is wheelie control. Same thing that we're looking at in the log, right? If you look right there, it says wheelie control, right? The table type is a timing offset. We want, the reason we use timing is because it's fast, it's abrupt, and it works. The x-axis, right, which is down here, x-axis, is pitch, okay? So as the car starts to pitch more positively, right, positive values, pitch as it nose up, right, the timing starts to come out of it. And then I use a y-axis of boost time, right? So what that means is this was just rough, archaic, let's make it work, right? So if it ever goes over 2 degrees of positive pitch, it's going to get hit with 19 degrees out of it, right? 19.6 degrees out of it, no matter how far into the run. The reason I use 2D is because you can tailor this to say, hey, this car is like kind of mean for the first like 0.6. It whips the front end up, but then the car starts to settle back out and it stays where it's at, like the pitch stays where it's at. Well, you may want to like leave this whole area for 0.6 alone. If it, if it picks up the front end, but it doesn't actually wheelie, right? It's like completely controllable. You may leave this all alone through here, right? But when you get out here at 3 seconds into the run and the car's going 120, 150, 100, however fast, right? You may want to be a lot more aggressive if the pitch starts to get up. So you just kind of tailor these values as you see fit. You can see there's a small taper in here. So this scale is where I built, and this is the way I rate. This is the exact same wheelie control table that I left in this car all of last year, and it worked great. If the car would get over 1.3 degrees of pitch at all into the run, it would start pulling timing out of it, and then it would bring the front end back down. It was really calm, really clean. Okay, so let's enable our data log overview. So if you click on data log and you hit activate overlay, this is what that run did. So let me show you a split screen version of this. Okay, so as you can see, this blue line is wheelie control. If I'm just going to hold the arrow over, you can see there it jumps up, right? It's at 1.7 degrees of pitch. It knocks a bunch of timing out of it. Like, what's it taking out of there, right? 9 degrees, 9.5 degrees. So it takes timing out of it, and then it sets the front end back down, right? The car pitches back down. And then it decides, hey, I'm still coming, right? So it winds up taking 14, 17 degrees out of it, right? It rides that wheelie control all the way out here, right? We're all the way out here into 3.2 into the run where it finally comes off of it. So it's riding that wheelie control the whole way down the racetrack until we get into the 8th mile, or into the 330. So and then just got out of the throttle because like it wasn't getting any better, right? So you can see, look at there, like look at this is throttle too, like it's not even to the floor, right? So obviously this wheelie control strategy wasn't going to work, right? Because it's just neutering the car. So now the question is like how bad was it, right? So you can look at shock data, you can look at video, you can look at a ride height sensor, whatever you want. But to be honest with you, the front tire never came off the ground, okay? It's just that the chassis is actually starting to move the way it used to move, okay? So if we look at this, there's the right rear shock, and then here's the left front shock. The left front shock moved 5.3 inches, or it started off at 3.4 and it makes its way up to 5.3, right? So it's right around 2 inches total, which on this car actually equates to 4 inches because of where the sensor is mounted versus the articulation of the control arm, the lower control arm on the front, the A arm. So it's actually got 4 inches of travel in it. We left this thing super sloppy loose. We wanted it to go down, right? So what do we do for the next round? Well, let's see. We go File, Open Global, and let's open up test 2. So let's look at their wheelie control table. 2D, right here. Now if you notice, what I did was, here, let's do this, data log, remove overlay. I just shut it off until 1.85, right, or 1.88 degrees of pitch, okay? So I'd bring this up in a comparison. It's just a little hard to view just because it's, but we'll try. So let's open a comparison. We'll go data logs, 2024, test 2. There we go. So the dotted line is test 2, all right? The solid line over here is test 1. So there's their front end suspension movement, right? There's the rear suspension movement. We don't need to really look at those. Let's look at this. Now, look at that. Wheelie control. Pulled 11 degrees out. We never even touched wheelie control here, okay? So we're never even touching wheelie control. It never touched it until out here. Now, well, it doesn't touch it actually out there because we're looking at a comparison. So if you look, the solid line is what is being displayed over here in this. So let's stop looking at that. There you go. That dotted line right there, we never touched wheelie control. Well, why did the RPM trace look like crap? Well, it didn't really look like crap. It just didn't look good, right? So it's just lazy. It just doesn't have a lot of power in it, right? So we also had no profiler retard, right? And we had a minor timing retard. I had a small timing retard in it here, okay? So either way, we never touch wheelie control on the second pass. Now, notice the pitch. The pitch is allowed. The pitch is staying a little bit lower. The reason the pitch is staying a little bit lower is because we right here, red front shock. Where are we at? Close this. There we go. So notice the right front shock doesn't move as far. Pulled a little travel out of the front end, shut off the wheelie control, and here we are. It's got a little bit smoother of a trace. Now this line right here, I had a big shift retard in it, and we also have a big drop in TPS. So, just because the car was driving a little bit to the left, I believe. So let's look at test 3, both the log and the global, right? So notice we got and we could do this over here in a comparison. So we click here for comparison, and then we can open up global files, 2024 test. We're looking at test 2 right now. Let's look at test 3. So no difference. I left the same wheelie control table in it. So let's look at test 1 to show you the difference in the comparison. So here you go, advanced, 2D table, table 2, and then let's go to table. All right, so the percentage change, whoops, the delta right there. So if you notice, the scaling all stays the same down here. Whoops. Didn't even know you could do that. Look at that. The scaling all stays the same down here, but the point where it actually, or the scaling changes, I'm sorry, the scaling changes a very little bit right here, but the point at where it removes timing is different, right? So look at, there's your base, there's our comparison. So pretty drastic changes there. Let's do this. There we go. Base, which is test 2, comparison, which is test 1, we're pulling timing out earlier. Everybody see that? Good. So we backed off wheelie control, and now the engine RPM trace looks a heck of a lot better. So let's look at test 3 in a comparison. So we'll go, there we go, data log, and test 3. There we go. Now we're getting to be in business, right? So let's just nudge that a little bit. There we go. So the starting points are the same. So look at that. There's a little bit better, right? So what we did here is notice the front shock is now moving a little bit less. We pulled travel out of it, and we also pulled, or we tightened up extension, right? Rebound on the front shock. Now, if you look, the engine's starting to be a little bit happier, right? Because we're in it with a little bit more power, not much, but pitch stays down, and that's due to travel. But we never hit wheelie control, right? So again, run 1 hammered with wheelie control, kept the front end down. Run 3, no wheelie control. Okay, so the moral of this is that the chassis is actually working now. It's moving the front end the way you want to. How you can look, the two runs right here, we got very similar boost curves, right? I mean, they're laying on top of each other, pretty damn close. But so either way, you can see how timing was affecting it dramatically. There's your boost curve, but just by adjusting that front shock and making it do what it's supposed to do, now it's not getting hammered with a timing retard for wheelie control, right? And the engine's actually responding, right? So here's the shift. Look, we don't even make it out to the shift until out here, or out here, and that's where just get out of the throttle, right? So VPS, there's a lot of ways to do wheelie control. You can do it with a ride height sensor or whatever. I like to use the VPS with pitch, and the reason being is because just because the ride height has moved up doesn't mean that the car isn't still happy that way, right? So we eventually get to a point where if we open up this one, we go test 5 clean. No, come on, honey. There we go. What do I do? Yeah, test 5 clean. There we go. All right, I already had it open. Whoops. There we get to a point where boost is in a little bit faster. The engine's happier. We still stay off of wheelie. Notice we're staying off of wheelie control the whole time. So wheelie control is a great thing to use. VPS is a great tool. Ride heights, whatever you're going to use. Great tool to use to keep the car safe on a brand new combo, and if something gets out of line, So this is wheelie control in action with a VPS. Again, you could also use ride height. The reason ride height, I'm not always so crazy about ride height is because it I guess it's the same thing as VPS. I guess I'm just kind of, pampered because I have both, right? But I just prefer to use the VPS with pitch because depending on how hard you hit the car with power, the back end may start to separate faster than it did prior. And it doesn't matter if the ride height had moved up a little bit, the tire's still on the ground, right? So, or the front end moved a little bit less. If you tie it down a little bit, if you tie a car down to no front end travel, and now it comes up and the ride height moves by 3.5, 4 inches, that means the front wheels are off by 3 inches or so off the ground, and that's where things start to get a little bit dangerous. Where at least with pitch, you kind of, it's you can tell, like, if the rear end moves the exact same amount every time and the front end moves, none at all, pitch is going to be negative. Once it goes flat, it's or wherever you have your limit set to, it'll knock timing out of it. So again, just opinion really. So ride height sensor or VPS, I prefer VPS. But wheelie control made possible through Holley's advanced tables. So when you're looking at other EFI systems, they'll tell you, well, we have a wheelie control strategy built in and whatnot. I've heard this from a couple other people. The problem is that you can't really modify this scale or this scale. You also can't modify, or you can't make any limit switches, basically, if you will. We can create an output that goes active if this thing reaches, if wheelie control exceeds X, and we could, wire it up and set this thing up to kill ignition if we wanted it to. So there's a ton of different possibilities that you can do with this thing. The good news is that Holley doesn't really limit you when it comes to advanced tables and how you want to do things. So anyway, that is my take on a little bit of chassis tuning. Maybe this taught y'all some stuff. The combo of a VPS and a Dominator works out really well. And people are going to ask, this is a VPS. This is my website, but this is a VPS from Davis. The data that we looked at, all the stuff that we just went over, is all based off of this $899 version of the VPS. VPS starts at $899, and you can add a whole bunch of different stuff to it and get it all the way up to $3,300. You can add traction control, self-learning traction control, yada yada. But everything that we just went over is their baseline VPS. So if you want to buy one, let me know. Be happy to sell you one. If you don't want to buy one, you already have one, and this teaches you how to do something with it. Awesome. If you don't want to buy one and you want to buy a ride height sensor, that's awesome too. Just wire it up and set it up to do wheelie control to keep you safe. So, all right, see you.